This woman covered in blood is giving birth, but behind her there's a horde of walkers. But she had to give birth to the baby right there. At this point, she shed tears of despair, because the zombie bit her on the arm during the escape. It won't be long before she too becomes a bloodthirsty monster. In order for the child in her womb to grow up healthy like a normal human being, she had to fight to have it. Just see her tear off a piece of clothing on her body into her mouth and bite down firmly. Not only can you avoid making a sound for the walkers to find, she can also relieve yourself of some pain. How she wished for Lady Luck at this point. But her hands and feet had begun to slowly mutate, and her pupils slowly became dull. Even the teeth grew into the face. And the outside was already occupied by zombies. The rest of the people were running away or being torn apart by them. The zombies have gradually become monsters due to the mutation of the virus. Most of the world has been taken over by them. Almost every day is spent in killing and bloodshed. This life went on for 7 years. The baby that was born in the zombie pile did not die, nor was the mother bitten and turned into a zombie. Instead, they grew up healthy as normal people. But she spent every day in fear, because she was often chased by her zombie mother. So often hide in the corner shivering. Even so, my mother, who had a good sense of smell, found me. And then she held me tightly with her hands and wouldn't let go. See her open a bloody mouth towards me to bite. I could only shed tears of pain and helplessness. My mouth kept screaming for my mother not to do this to me. She was actually just playing hide and seek with me, because even though my mother turned into a zombie, but because of her family, she has 1/3 of her humanity. And she loved me even more. For example, I want to go out with her before every outing. But no matter how much I pleaded with my mother, she wouldn't. But even if I pampered her, she wouldn't say yes. Because the outside world is still occupied by zombies. To keep me at home, my mother would look at me with sharp fangs and murderous eyes. In fact, she wouldn't take me out because it was too dangerous outside and she was worried about my safety. Unable to speak, she could only write with her hand on my palm. And this time, the mother went out to look for a little bear. I had no choice but to ask her to come back as soon as possible. I didn't expect her to meet a long-necked monster right after she left the house. The next second, his long tongue came directly at the woman. Seeing this, she used her nimble body to dodge it perfectly. And a spike slowly sticks out from the back of her head. And then quickly attacked the monster. In the blink of an eye, she pierced the thick-skinned monster. He shuddered as she didn't react. Just felt a paralysis coming on. The next second, he passed out heavily. Looking at the food on the floor, woman can't help but drool. But this monster tastes worse than shit. In order to fill her stomach, she could only barely eat. Just as the woman was eating, several shots suddenly rang out behind her. 2 humans are shooting at an oncoming group of monsters. They seemed to be afraid of the light. When the man shone his flashlight on them, they were instantly petrified. But more and more monsters came, but the 2 of them simply could not last the morning. The woman on the side looked at them and thought, how could there be survivors out there at this hour? And don't they know that this low-damage light and the sound of bullets will irritate them more instead? Forget it, it's none of her business if they live or die. Suddenly, she noticed something familiar about the long-haired man's backpack. She quickly rushed towards him. Sensing danger, the long-haired man immediately turned on his flashlight and shone it at the woman, who came in front of them in the blink of an eye, followed by a heavy whip kick on the man in red. The next second he fell to the ground and made a painful sound. The companions saw this and told her to get out of the way, holding up a pistol and shivering. He did not know that this would completely anger the woman. But she didn't hurt the man, just took the bag off his back, leaving the long-haired man to fend for himself in the face of the walkers. At this point, the man felt completely devastated. But the next second, they stopped in their tracks. Seeing this scene, the man instantly revealed a long-lost smile. He thought to himself, could it be that he has some kind of immunity? And just when he thought he was saved, but felt a few drops of water fall on his head. And then he saw a monster standing behind him. 7 years ago, the woman struggled hard to give birth to her child. But by now the outside was surrounded by layers of zombies. She could only hold her baby tightly and hide in the corner. As long as there are zombie monsters approaching, they will be wiped out by the woman. This day a living person came here by mistake. The man saw the corpses all over the floor and tried to turn away. But then a child's cry suddenly came from behind. In his curiosity, he slowly walked towards the house. But the next second, there was a sharp needle against the front of his throat. A closer look reveals a monster covered in blood. It looks like she's breastfeeding. This is the scene where the woman first meets her husband Cub. Looking at the school bag on the back of the long-haired man, the woman remembered a scene from the past. She quickly grabbed the school bag from the back of the other party and left, and then rushed around to look for the bear. At this point, the bear were all robbed of their weapons. Even more unlucky is that the school bag was also stolen. Relying on a broken stone in his hands alone, he did not know how long he could hold out. Just when he was at his wit's end and ready to die, suddenly he heard rustling footsteps. In the next second, a sharp needle suddenly appeared in the neck. A closer look revealed that it was his wife. But after the mutation, she couldn't remember who the man in front of her was. And then she roared at him. The woman looked at the familiar and unfamiliar face in front of her. Seems to remember something. Just when the man thought he was going to be killed by his wife, instead, his wife gave him a big hug. The man looks at his mutated wife, who has risked her life to find herself, and she found his stolen backpack. After a moment's rest, the two were ready to go home. The road was full of zombies. However, these little pieces of garbage are no match for a woman. The spikes on the back of her head kill a walker with each attack. To escape the zombie hordes, the couple had to run towards the narrow hallway. Weak fighting power of the bear can only use the torch to shine so that the zombies temporarily stop attacking. Suddenly the two of them seemed to see something horrible. Both eyes stared straight up. In front of them was the fractured skyscraper. Looking at the 100-meter-high floorman side, this is completely finished. Coincidentally, the flashlight also ran out of power at this point. The two men looked at the monsters that kept coming towards them. They both wanted to stay behind and let the other go first. In their respective hearts, they both wanted to keep each other alive. The man raised his gun and shouted, "Come here, monsters." The next second he was grabbed by an unknown object. The woman who saw the scene ignored the zombies in front of her. One hand held the bear in a death grip. The other hand grabbed the steel bars on the tall building. But the tentacles that pulled him were too strong. This will not last long at all. When the man saw the huge thing below him, he instantly broke into a cold sweat. A giant monster was pulling on his foot with its tentacles and wouldn't let go. It can't help but salivate at the food in front of it. However, the bear above, let out a hysterical scream, because the tentacles that were wrapped around his feet were getting tighter and tighter. The number of zombie monsters on the woman's side was also increasing. The hands of the two people holding each other also began to tremble. If this continues, they will surely be buried here. Without thinking, she immediately let go of her grip on the steel bar. The monster below quickly pulls the two downward. The bear who saw the scene was puzzled. But the woman showed a creepy smile. The monster below is still licking its tongue. At this point, the two were getting closer and closer to each other's mouths. Just when we thought the couple was going to become its delicacy, the woman immediately swung sharp needle at the monster above, and immediately pulls one of them downward, and then quickly threw it at the gargoyle's head below. Smoothly pierce each other's tongue tied to the husband's feet with a sharp needle. The monster felt the pain coming on and let go. The woman who saw the scene felt very relieved. Just wait until you land and get rid of the surrounding monsters. This will protect the bear well. At that moment she was suddenly held tightly by the other side. She feels very happy to smell her husband's sweat. A few moments later the two fell heavily on the head of the monster. The crowd of zombies who saw this scene was stunned. Due to inertia, two people were bounced away. Then they fell heavily to the ground and tumbled for tens of meters. But the man didn't have time to catch his breath before he immediately got up. Carrying his wife, he fled quickly. Trolls look at the mouth of the food fled. He showed his horrible face in anger. Can the couple really escape from his clutches? Along the way they kept asking each other about their injuries. They were relieved to know that neither of them was hurt. Just as the woman was thinking about why her husband was so good to her, the body was suddenly pierced by the monster's sharp horns. The bear who saw the scene shouted out to the other side, looking back to find out. The person who came is the monster just now. He was licking his tongue like he was ready for a feast. It didn't know that the mutated woman was physically unusually strong. This little wound doesn't do anything for her. But the zombies behind her were like shadows that could not be shaken off. While the man was rummaging in his backpack, when the zombies were about to jump on the two men, the woman held back the pain from her wounds and quickly swung the needle at several of the monsters in front of her. They were obliterated in an instant. But then the zombies that were coming seemed to see something deadly and they were shouting nervously. The next second, a hand grenade appears in front of them. Before they could react, they were blown to pieces. Seeing the effects of expired grenades, Bear threw all the grenades out of the bag. In an instant, the zombies that came after them were blown to pieces. Only the one with the broken hands is still struggling to hold on, but the gargoyle standing behind him was unharmed. However, there was only one grenade left in his hand. The woman saw this and hurriedly asked the bear to hand it to her. The woman who had taken the grenade was surprisingly quick to run towards the front. The gargoyle who saw this had a disdainful expression, and then immediately reached out towards the two of them. Sensing danger, the man told his wife to get out of the way while he quickly fell to the ground. However, the woman not only does not dodge, instead, she turned around and faced the troll. Seeing this scene, the bear was furious and yelled out, "Silly wife, what are you doing? You're too far away from him, you know that?" However, the woman had already pulled the safety off. With the bear looking on in horror, woman tosses grenade in midair, and then kicked hard with his feet towards the gargoyle. But the gargoyle looked at the grenade coming towards him with a question mark on his face. However, the next second he caught it with his mouth. He didn't react, his head was instantly exploded. The woman landed with ease and comfort, and not forgetting to give the dead troll a friendly gesture. The man saw such a smart and powerful wife, and rushing towards her with a smile. The two of them ran away before the zombies arrived in the distance. The bear, worried about his wife's injury, hurriedly asked the other side to lift his clothes to check. The wound that was pierced by the gargoyle just now had healed. The man smiled with relief when he found that his wife was no longer in danger. To keep his daughter from worrying, they rushed towards home. With no walkers in the way, the two soon arrived at the house. Hearing the father's voice, the daughter rushed towards them, randomly giving him a big hug, randomly rubbing his rough cheek over and over, and not forgetting to show her father her finished homework. Seeing such a good and understanding daughter, he lifted her up high with joy, and to reward his daughter, he brought gifts from outside. The father pulled out what turned out to be a chocolate bar. She stopped calling him bear when she got her favorite snack. The woman on the sidelines was so happy to see her family. Even when she's tired, she feels full of strength. She thought to herself, no matter what happens in the future, I will be by their side for the rest of my life. While the family was happy and jumping for joy, there was a stranger standing outside the door. Is this icy man an enemy or a friend? Mother and daughter in the process of avoiding the zombies, stumbling upon a normal man. After a long time of helping each other, not only did the man become the wife of the woman, but also the father of a child. That's it. A family of 3 forms a happy family in a world full of blood and gore. We don't just have 3 meals a day together, even sleeping in the same bed. But every time I ate, my mother was watching. And I never saw her eat. She could not speak, but she always wrote down the words she wanted to express in my hand, always telling me to eat more and grow up faster. But I always wondered what my mother ate. To find out, I then took out my precious snacks and handed them to my mother, and told her the cookies were super good. But she said with a helpless face that she couldn't eat such things. When she saw my innocent and cute expression, she had to reach out carefully to take it. I saw this and I took it back, and then reluctantly broke off a small piece, reluctantly handed it to my mother with a smile. I didn't expect her to look at me with a helpless face, and then my father came over and asked me to give him a bite. I rushed to put the cookie in my mouth, thinking that my mother could eat other things, so I brought her a noodle and handed it to her, and the sugar that I always eat. My mother saw that I was bothering her a lot. In an instant she actually let out a hysterical roar. Never seen such a horrible scene of my mother. My eyes were wet with tears at once. She was very sorry to see my aggrieved face. Just when my mother was about to stop hiding it from me, when she was about to tell me the truth, her pupils suddenly became dull. I kept calling out to try to get her to wake up. However, seeing the nosebleed I left behind, she turned into a bloodthirsty monster. Just when we thought the woman would eat her own child, she had quickly opened the door and ran out. My father, who heard the sound, rushed to check on me. By now the woman had come outside, just in time to bump into another horrible woman. Just as she was smiling and facing the woman, her opponent's arm had penetrated her body, followed by a long-awaited excited laugh, followed by the use of sharp fingernails to dismember the opponent, and then shoving her flesh into her mouth one by one, while eating a delicious meal, and thinking about protecting her daughter in her head. I can't eat my own family. I have to wake up now. But the sweet taste is so fragrant and so tempting. Children's skin and flesh, think about it, will be drooling, thinking about it. And the woman threw her head back and let out a hissing sound that rang through the sky. It didn't take long. Mother came home and lay with us in the same bed. And she looked at me sleeping and she thought to herself, I never thought the smell of a child's blood would be so appealing to me. Something almost went wrong just now. I must concentrate. I have to be careful, especially in front of monsters, so that I can protect my family around me. Early the next morning, my father was going out to look for supplies and kept reminding me not to wake up my mother, or he would punish me. And then he walked out with his backpack. Looking at his father who had left the house, I smiled a strange and happy smile, because I could sneak out while my mother was asleep. And soon I was ready to go out. I was humming a little song as I walked down the street full of walkers, and I was looking for something useful in the ruins. This is when a man and a woman came into my sight, but I didn't care. I was painting smiling faces on the rocks with watercolors. And then I rushed off to find food and things that I could use. And as I shoveled down a piece of dirt, I felt a chill come over me. What would I see in this ruin of bodies?